Welcome back to Yaffee Live here on the Talk Monster. I am Tennessee's voice of reason, Chattanooga's conservative conscience. We've got a bunch of you weighing in on our text monster. You can always weigh in, 423-267-1023. Joining me on the show right now, as he does every Thursday, is Brandon Lewis. He is the founder and contributor of the Tennessee Conservative. Go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, how are you, sir?
Man, I'm fantastic.
Good. So, you guys over at Tennessee Conservative, you've been doing a great job covering what's going on in Nashville. You had the ICE operation working with Tennessee Highway Patrol. You and I talked about it before, arresting a lot of illegal immigrants. You kind of detailed on the site some of the worst that have been caught. But you also detailed how, I guess, some Nashville officials and politicians are kind of trying to get in the way and retaliate over some of this. Talk about that.
So the Tennessee Highway Patrol conducted about 600 traffic stops with ICE officers, and they ended up detaining 196 aliens with criminal histories. And I think that's kind of interesting to me because if you look at 600 traffic stops and 196 are illegal aliens with criminal histories, I mean, what were in the other 400? Just illegal aliens? I have no idea. And these include convicted sex offenders, murderers, several members of foreign terrorist gangs. And 95 of those arrested had prior criminal convictions and pending criminal charges, while 31 detained had already come back into the U.S. illegally. And so media outlets are reporting, and even on social media, you can see, Yaffee, that it is impacting the illegal alien community. I mean, if you read the comment section in a lot of businesses and different places, first thing you have to do is translate it into English. But then as you read all the comments, I mean, thousands of them, it's like, why don't we need to go somewhere else? And so that is the whole point of so much of this legislation that they've been working on, is that it does become a deterrent. But Freddie O'Connell, who's kind of cut from the same cloth as Tim Kelly, has continued to state his opposition and retaliation. He even signed an executive order to track and report interactions with federal immigration authorities and wanted to start a belonging fund to help illegal aliens live in Tennessee without fear of deportation. So, I mean, even, it's awful because, Republicans in Tennessee barely have the will to do anything, and the Democrats are fighting tooth and nail to stop it. So when you got one side that isn't really voting with its constituents and another side that's helping, it's a little discouraging, but it's good to see this movement.
So you had mentioned our mayor, Tim Kelly, there, our Chattanooga mayor, Tim Kelly. You think that if, say, Tennessee Highway Patrol tried to do something like that here with ICE, that he'd be kind of making the same protests that the Nashville mayor is making?
I would be willing to bet $1,000 he will not come out and wholeheartedly endorse it. I would. Anybody wants to take me up on that bet, just email me. I'll take you up. We'll get a signing note. We'll have to announce it publicly so people feel shame if they don't pay up. But so there, yes, he is over and over again through photo ops and was showing up at organizations, and even, I mean, he's even sponsored, and other city organizations have sponsored workshops for illegal aliens. It's like, how can you get a bunch of money? How can you get taxpayer-funded benefits? How can you stay here? And so I would assume that him and Freddie are probably pretty darn close, although, Tennessee is or Chattanooga rather, in Hamilton County is a little bit more conservative, so I imagine that his liberal outrage will be somewhat subdued comparatively, but it ain't going to be enthusiastic.
Yeah, so, at best he would stay quiet, is basically what you're saying, but even that.
Yes.
Probably wouldn't be the case. Yeah, it's interesting because now we have Tennessee U.S. Congressman Andy Ogles, who is wanting to investigate and possibly charge Freddie O'Connell of Nashville with a crime for impeding ICE. Do you think that he has crossed that line as of yet? I mean, we know that he is kind of speaking out against the ICE deportations and everything else, but has he crossed the line of impeding? What do you think?
Well, I suppose it would have a lot to do with what his government does and what his executive order says. I'm not an attorney, but we have seen instances here recently where a federal judge was arrested for interfering with ICE and essentially trying to help illegal aliens get out of ICE enforcement. So these Democrat lawmakers, it's always so frustrating as a Republican. And back to when we talked last week, our school board pretty much unanimously said, sure, we should have illegal alien funded or taxpayer funded illegal alien education, even though 78% of GOP primary voters say no. And that's our school board in Hamilton County. And so you see stuff like that, and then you watch the Democrats actually fight for their constituents. And it is very frustrating to see the misalignment on the Republican side and what seems to be a pretty close to perfect alignment on the left.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm speaking with Brandon Lewis, who is the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. Have you kept up at all with this story out of Dalton, Georgia? I know I talked about it on this show, where the girl, 19 years old, was pulled over for something, found out she was an illegal immigrant. Now, she had been here since she's 4, but detained by ICE. Her dad was already detained by ICE. A lot of people feel like, well, it's not really fair to her because she's been here that long. But what do you think about that whole situation?
Well, my wife actually told me about that. I didn't read about it, but to my knowledge, from what I recall, she didn't have a driver. She was driving without a driver's license, no insurance. And so those are two things that people never think about. Everybody that lives in Tennessee probably knows someone or many people that have been hit by an illegal alien that didn't have auto insurance. And so now you're left holding the bag. So, I mean, she's been here since she's 4, but apparently either because of her citizenship status or because of irresponsibility, I think illegal aliens could probably still get car insurance, would be my guess, if they worked on it. And so I just don't, the issue is where do you stop, right? Everybody's got a sad story. One person's been here 16 years. One person's been here 16 months. Which one's sadder? I don't know. But, it's like if you take your kids along to commit a crime, sometimes bad things happen. If you take your kids along with you to commit a crime, bad things happen. And it's not responsible parenting to involve your children in that situation. And so there will be consequences. And as far as I know, I think they're just deporting them all together.
Well, yeah. I mean, for even those, like there are some, I guess, kids of illegal immigrants who are technically citizens, but the family gets to choose. But in this situation, yeah, they're deporting the whole family. The whole family was illegal. Speaking with Brandon Lewis, you had mentioned, though, it is some good news, though, that you have ICE and Tennessee Highway Patrol kind of doing these operations, catching a lot of criminal aliens. Some more good news as well. You have a story about how Sumner County is one of 6 Tennessee counties to join the ICE enforcement program.
Yeah, they are, to my knowledge, are joining a program that's slightly different than what we've done here in Hamilton County. Here in Knox, Greene, Hamilton, and Putnam counties are part of a 287G program. We've talked about this before, and it allows local law enforcement to work on even identifying illegal immigrants already in custody and initiating immigration proceedings. However, Sumner and Giles are in the 280G program as well now, and they're able to also serve illegal immigrants already in jail with civil immigration warrants. And so these are good things. I mean, that's not many, 6 or 7. I don't know. There may be more counties, 7 or 8, maybe if we've missed one, 8 out of 95. I mean, it's not the best. And so hopefully some of these sheriffs and maybe even some police officers that are in more conservative counties and cities will start stepping up and doing what GOP primary voters want them to do. And that's, to tackle this problem head on. And I would say this, Yaffee, I talked to a lot of school board members that cast that terrible vote. And, they all have these compassionate humanitarian appeals. Like, they don't apparently seem to be voting with the people that sent them, but they never think about the kid that's native here that goes to school and can't get an education because half or 70 or 80% of the class speaks Spanish. They never seem to think about any of that stuff. It's like the compassion is always for the lawbreaker, and it's never for the constituent. And so that needs to change. Charity starts at home.
That is an excellent point. I think that's one reason why the left hates Trump so much, too, because Trump comes out and he's like, look, I'm going to put American citizens first and America first, our interests first. And it's just like, for some reason, some of the left, they just can't handle that. It's just like, no, how dare you put our country first? And it's like, should be common sense. It's just Very interesting. Brandon Lewis joining me right now. I wanted to talk about one more story in your site where it says that more Tennesseans are protected from compelled speech with the governor's signing of legislation. This has to do, once again, with the transgender issue. And, you can no longer be forced to use the pronouns that an individual prefers. Talk about this.
Yeah, and so in 2023, they passed a law that essentially said teachers as well as public school districts couldn't face any civil lawsuits if some kid or parent got all mad because you didn't call their daughter whatever magical name that you think that they should be called from a pronoun standpoint. And so, in addition, they have now protected everyone from having to use compelled speech at all, like even in the school districts. Because a lot of the school districts in Tennessee, the liberal ones especially, which, it's funny, not completely, but at the very tippy top, the more liberal the county is, the worse the school district is. Like everyone at the top are blue. Almost everyone at the top are pretty blue. And by numbers, it's definitely blue. And so a lot of those LEAs had goofy, policies that say, hey, if somebody wants to be, referred to as the King of England or what the heck ever they come up with next week, you got to do it as a teacher, which, to me, I think is just compelling teachers to lie and compelling teachers to teach kids that dishonesty is okay, and that even if you've got strong convictions, if you're bullied and badgered by bureaucracy, you should abandon those conventions and convictions and just pretend that reality doesn't exist. And so I'm glad that parents no longer have to make, or not parents and teachers and administrators no longer have to make those decisions to either lie or psychologically do something that's detrimental to a student or lose their job. So it's good to see that that's happened.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because there was the law kind of similar to this where you would actually put the correct gender based on your actual biological sex at birth on driver's licenses. Then, of course, the ACLU immediately sues on that, says it could harm someone if not use their preferred pronoun. How does that harm them other than maybe harms their feelings? So, I mean, to the point where you talk about reality, it's just like, I mean, to me, it's like, now we're going to give up actual identification on our IDs because you could hurt someone's feelings,
Well, you have to remember that hurt feelings is a terminal condition for liberals. And so, hurt feelings, death, dismemberment, they're all in the same category mentally and emotionally for those folks. And so it is, the whole thing is, right, if you want to control a population, if you want to control somebody, get away from facts and everything else and just appeal to emotion and radically attack everything and be overly critical of all the institutions and everything. And we've seen these programs play out before in other societies. I got a question for you. Somebody sent me an article that was in 1819, which is the Alabama publication. I thought you might know something about this. Basically saying that Alabama needs stronger conservatives, and I did not know stronger Republicans, or I should say conservative Republicans. Do you know what happened in the legislature the last little while, and why folks would hold that opinion? Was it Tennessee, where a lot of legislation just got completely scuttled?
Basically, I mean, there was part of it was because the Democrats filibustered on the last day, and there were some issues there, and the Republicans should have stood up and changed some of the rules. But there was a Laken-Riley Act that was being pushed on the state level in Alabama that got killed. So that didn't end up getting passed. There was an election audit bill that didn't end up getting passed. I was pretty upset at them because they had passed a couple of years ago no tax on overtime, which is something that Trump supports, and they killed that. And so Tennessee and Alabama have kind of these similar issues where you have such a supermajority that you get lawmakers that are complacent, because at the end of the day, they know you're not going to vote for the Democrat. So they get away with being more moderate on some things. They don't have that. And people, unfortunately, they don't really participate in the primaries like they should. So that will happen. So it's pretty similar to what goes on in Tennessee. You get these super majorities, and there's benefits to that because Democrats aren't running things, but there's also that's kind of the flaw, if that makes sense.
Well, I had I think it was the former GOP chair Mark Harrison got all on to me and it threw it back up in my face that I have said time and time again. I think we would actually have more conservative legislation in Tennessee if we could pick up about 20 more Democrat seats.
Yeah.
And it's sad to say that, though. I mean, it's like, okay, we have hired these people to do a job. They are so unaligned with the folks they have to represent that the only way we can get them to conceivably represent their constituents is if a Democrat runs against them and they're afraid that their constituents won't show up to vote for them. And so I don't know if it makes me feel any better that Alabama's got those problems, but they say that misery loves company, so that's good.
Yeah, exactly. Brandon Lewis, he's the founder of the Tennessee Conservative. Always read that stuff and always catch the podcast of this interview at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Brandon, I always appreciate it, my friend. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care, buddy.